So again, this is one of the assignments that I wanted to introduce to you guys. And again, this is a landscape drawing. As far as landscapes, of course, when we think about landscapes, we think about, of course, genres of landscapes, whether it be seascapes, mountainscapes, cityscapes. There are a lot of different kinds of scapes, urban or more about nature, more about pristine. As far as the landscape that I want to do is utilize the resaca. So when we utilize the resaca, the idea is, of course, the water. We need to make sure we, of course, look at the water. And again, you can be as creative as you want when you approach the idea of the water. But along with the water, we have, of course, light, reflection, and distortion. Today, if we were to go today, we'd see a lot of movement, a lot of wiggling of the water, and the reflection would be very, very distorted. But again, the reflection's always there. There's always, of course, a little bit more recognizable, and sometimes there's less recognizable, depending on how much the wind is actually blowing. So to actually do this, again, it's a lot like the paper bag where I get, again, like a little sienna color, a light brown, and of course I take a photograph first. But again, I do ask my students to kind of get into the discipline of actually standing in front of your real life still life. In a sense where if you're going to be drawing something from nature, go outside and go get a chair and go sit next to it. That way, of course, if you need any inspiration, if you have a, it kind of heightens your senses because again, you can smell the water, you can feel the breeze, you can hear the birds. So again, you are within the mood. But again, of course, when we do have to, we don't finish, we have to leave. Well, at least we have a nice reference. And again, it's never always the same. Sometimes it may be a little bit, some may be a little higher, a little bit lower, a little bit less windy, a little bit more windy. The colors change according to how high the sun is or how low the sun is. But definitely things do change. So as far as this drawing, again, I use again a very, very light brown. And again, I just treat it again like a pencil, like a graphite pencil. I sketched it. And again, I really want to incorporate this idea of space and depth. So this drawing kind of reminds me also of the perspective drawing, where again, it has a sense of big and of course smaller, 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 smaller. A lot like a 1 point perspective. But again, as far as the bridge, it's not very, very, straight. It kind of curves inwards, outwards, and it kind of goes straight and then it goes back down. As far as the poles, they're not all vertical. Some kind of go this way and that way. As far as the water, that's the part that most people would say, oh, it's impossible. It doesn't want to cooperate with me. The water is moving, it's absorbing everything. And a lot of people always just assume that the water is just green because, again, they look directly into the water and it looks very, very green. And again, that is the algae that's in within the water. The water doesn't really circulate enough for the water to actually get clear. It's just like your aquarium. If you have an aquarium and if you don't have the water circulating, the light itself from the room or the light from the sun is going to start creating algae within the water. So again, the water, of course, turns kind of greenish. But at an angle, as you look towards the water is a lot like a mirror in the sense no matter what natural color the water is, its ability is that it reflects. So again, whatever kind of things you see within it, of course, is going to distort, it's going to change, it's going to move around. And the way, of course, I do this is again, I treat everything again like a graphite drawing. Boom, 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 boom. I hit on the palm trees a little smaller, a little bit bigger. But again, every 2 or 3 seconds, I'm looking back and forth. I'm trying to analyze, I'm trying to absorb, I'm trying to get as much as I can. Any area that I can shade a little bit more with a neutral, I do so. But eventually I come back and say, okay, let's start doing the layers. It's gonna make it look a little bit more objective, more truthful. So as far as the palms, when I saw them, they looked very, very neutral. The light was coming from the far right-hand side. You can definitely see the shadows moving this way. And the way I approach the color, as you can see here, I approach it with layers. Layers of yellow, layers of a little bit of blue, layers of some types of green. And again, I build them up kind of like a little bit more like a patchy kind of an area. I didn't want to make it look so smooth. If I can get a little bit of transition, I got a little bit of transition because I helped to create a little movement. And then I came back with little strokes that resemble the texture of the grass. Some people like to try to draw the leaves, the leaves or the blades of the grass over and over and over again. But the thing is, if you have the white underneath, it doesn't really, really help. You need to get rid of a lot of the white. And then from there, start building up the texture as you think you see it. So here again, I use a little bit more of the indigo blue, darker blues, along with some of the darker greens, and really, really force my way in there. But definitely you can see the buildup. You can see the little bit of transition of the shadow moving away. As far as the water, you can start seeing some of the rippling, some of the brownishness. And it's not the brownishness of the water, it's the brownishness of course, what's reflected around it. Again, since the sun is moving this way, there's a lot of heavy shadow. So as far as these palm trees, it'd be also casted within the water. You can see the poles starting to be casted. Actually, this line of the bridge, it's moving, but again, it's wiggling and moving and swaying through the space. Here, the blueness is more from the blueness of the sky. When I have a little bit more blueness here, of course, I see the blueness here. It's starting to make sense. But again, as far as this drawing, it's easily a 6-hour drawing. So again, this is something that will take a little bit more time to do. As far as a palm tree, again, the palm fronds, they're a lot like little fingers. And as the wind kind of whips this way, of course, they kind of turn in that direction. So sometimes I press on it and I lift it, and press on it and lift it. Because there are a lot of little things that, of course, you have to think about. But as far as if the sun is out, you're going to see a lot of white on the water. A lot of white on the water between the brightness of the sky, the brightness of the sun. It's going to make a lot of areas look very, very light, very, very soft. As far as the grass, it's going to look very, very brilliant, especially with the green. Because again, the more light that you have reflecting, the more you're going to be able to see the colors. But anyways, this is the idea of the perspective drawing. Again, you can do, sorry, the landscape drawing. Again, you can take any perspective you want. You can draw your shoes overhanging in the water. You can look to the left. You can look to the right. You can look in any direction that you want to. But again, within the drawing, we always have this idea of space. And we have 3 layers of space. The first layer is the foreground layer that I decided to draw here. And then the middle ground, of course, is the water, which is the majority of it. And then over here is the background, which again, you can't really see yet. Of course, I probably would do like little distant looking little trees. Again, very, very faint, very, very soft. Make it look more atmospheric. As far as the sky, it's going to be moved from side to side. Unfortunately, I don't have the reference to the picture anymore, but definitely I can go back. And again, it's right across from the drawing room, going around the edge. There's a little ramp that goes downwards. And of course, you have that openness of water. But again, you can crop a drawing a little bit more. So I'm going to kind of make this a little bit bigger. I'm going to make this the entire drawing. I really would like to get into the details of that. But again, that's the hope that we would like to be able to start this landscape drawing very, very soon. So again, you can go more landscape if you want to go more panoramic, or you can go more vertical if you really want to get the stretch of the trees and of course the stretch of the sky. But again, this is going to be the assignment that, it's definitely it can break your spirit because again, there's just a lot of things to do. But again, all you need is a little confidence. So sometimes, again, what I like to do is do the sketch first, have a really nice sense of confidence. Okay, got my layout really, really well, and then I'll start attacking a little space. So if I can feel good about this little part here, if I can feel good about that little part here, then all of this is the same. I just have to make sure that I keep looking and I adapt to whatever the image is giving me. But again, naturally, I have the students sit at the end of the deck. They sit underneath the bridge. They sit underneath the palm tree. We take the drawing boards out there, and definitely we do enjoy, being outside. Today would have been a little bit breezy. The water would have been very, very challenging. But again, it depends on which perspective you have. So again, you kind of move to the left to the right. But again, this is the assignment that again, it's going to take a little bit longer amount of time, but definitely it would be a great accomplishment if you can actually get it done. Because there's a lot to think about. There's a lot to work with. But definitely, I really don't, try not to give the students a sense that it's too overwhelming, but it is a challenge. There's a lot to look at. So again, I made it a little bit more challenging for myself by actually incorporating the bridge. But again, that's a part of school that we do know are these bridges that go across these bodies of water. So again, this is a drawing that, of course, we're looking forward to doing. As far as what I wanted to work with you today, or got all these little sheets of paper ready to go. But again, it's ideas of drawing portraits. Most people feel like if I can draw a good portrait, I've definitely accomplished a lot. I can definitely prove to people that I've come a long way instead of course, being so amateurish. So again, what I would like to do is start off with just little portions, and then from there, of course, gradually get myself a little bit stronger, to make myself a little bit stronger. So again, we're going to do everything piece by piece. As far as the references, you can take pictures of yourself, pictures of your own eye, pictures of your nose, pictures of your lips, stuff like that. And I did post on your WhatsApp, just some ideas. So again, these are some of the ideas that I posted. And again, sometimes again, being of course we're so disconnected with people coming this day and that day or no days at all. The idea is that some of these things can be overwhelming. But the thing is, we need to make sure that these things are very, very easy to do as well. They're very, very simple as long as you utilize your shading technique. Your shading technique is your benefit, that is your strength. And that's why I put so much time and effort into teaching you a little bit about rhythm, teaching you about contrast, teaching you about transitions, about the variety, the blending, and all that stuff. So it really, really relies on, of course, it depends a lot as far as the finishing of the object, finishing of the noses or the lips and so forth. So again, I did post that. And again, the idea of drawing someone smiling, smirking, showing teeth, or showing all your teeth, drawing hair, drawing ears, adding color, it's all fairly, fairly relative and it's not that far out of your reach. But at the same time, it can be very, very overwhelming when you feel like you're not doing very well. So the first thing I want to just kind of just do really quick is just to try to do attempt doing an eye. A lot of people, of course, feel like the eye is the most important part of the entire face, is because it's very, very expressive, and it definitely has a lot of potential. Definitely, if you have a good sketch from it, definitely you feel like you can have more success. I did download some pictures. Let me see if I can find them super, super quick. Okay, here's one. Now, when I find the eyes, it doesn't matter. I mean, it doesn't mean that I want one picture more than the other. But the idea is that if I'm able to open up the image really, really well, I'm really, really good. I say this is a very good picture because I can see everything very, very clearly. So as far as this drawing here, I'm just going to draw it with this is a 2D pencil. Let me put a point on it. So as far as what shape or form would this be? Definitely it is a circle. As far as when people approach the idea of the eye, again, in a very, very minimal perspective, they, of course, they draw one curve, and then they draw another curve, and of course, they draw the iris, and then, of course, they draw the pupil. From there, of course, they draw the lashes. And again, most people say, well, what's wrong with this eye? Well, the thing is more of an icon of an eye, an icon. It's very, very generic. It wouldn't tell me the ethnicity of the person, and there is no sense of oppression. And again, it doesn't have a sense of it being, relative to looking like anyone's. It's just very, very generic. So again, would this pass? No, this would not pass. So again, the most important thing when, of course, we are drawing is, of course, observation. If I was a musician, of course, I have to be listening. If I was a culinary person, I have to be tasting or, of course, smelling. So again, we do have to use our senses. And if I have to follow a recipe as if a chef, so you need to follow this recipe by the book. Well, again, it's portion by portion. And again, everything has to be done meticulously to the minute, to the second, and so forth. So again, if this has to be drawn, you're drawing a portrait of someone, well, of course, you want to, of course, pay that person that respect, especially if it's a commission. But again, I said, well, I have liberty. I have liberty. And again, I can change things if I want. But again, I need to stay as focused as I possibly can. First thing I usually focus on is like, where are my highlights? Well, I have a highlight here. I have a highlight there. I have a highlight here. I have a little tiny highlight here. I have a highlight there. I have some highlighting here. I have some highlighting here. I have a lot of highlighting on the top. I have some highlighting right here. As far as my shades, I have a lot of shade. All of this in here, I have some good amount of shade. I have heavy shades in between the folds. This here seems to be more shaded than up here. There's some soft shading here that moves across the eye this way, around, around, and around. There's also some shading inside the white of the eye. As far as the white of the eye, it looks very dark grayish. There's also shading in the corners. There's shading on top of the iris, moving downwards. There's shading inside of the white of the eye, moving inwards towards the right. As far as the brow, it's also very shaded. If I have to, of course, shade it, I have to have a lot of shading. And of course, there's a lot of texture. There's texture of the eyelashes moving upwards and also to the right. There's eyelashes moving to the left. There's eyelashes moving towards the middle. Eyelashes moving this way. As far as the brow, it's kind of hard to tell because of the lack of contrast, but definitely you can see that the lines are moving off to the right. There's some lines that are kind of like spaced out on the top. You can see the separation between the lines. But again, there's a lot of observation. So again, you as a visual person, you have to try to make sense. And again, you can strategize a little bit, but eventually you have to kind of just take off with it. So I'm going to do this with graphite first, and then I can work a little bit of color into it. So you can kind of see how that would work. Being that, of course, you finally got these Prismacolors, and are we going to use these or not? But definitely we are going to use them. So do you guys want me to do this in graphite, or do you want me to do it with color pencil?
Could you do it for just in
Color
case?
pencil.
Color pencil. That sounded like something. So as far as the colored pencils, I already sharpened some and I got them ready and I have a nice palette. And I really would like to be able to utilize as many as possible from the light blues, of course the whites, a lot of creams and browns. I have some reddish color, orangish colors, lavenderish colors. The reason why I always put ish is because, you know, there's somewhere within that family. And again, we talked about colors. I showed you guys how to draw the color wheel and of course what colors will neutralize other colors. And that was the purpose of drawing the bag, that when it comes time to this will make a little bit more sense. So as far as drawing this, again, like, you know, like the paper bag, like the bridge, like the landscape, of course, I think of this as being, you know, what shape would it be? So I'm going to draw a very, very soft circle. And that's going to, of course, symbolize the idea of the sphere or the circle that's sitting underneath. As far as from there, I'm going to look for angles. So again, just like when I was drawing the perspective drawing, I light up my phone, since this is my reference. Again, normally you guys would be, of course, like standing across from each other, you know, maybe like 2 or 3 feet apart. Again, with this COVID thing, you know, it kind of makes that kind of like maybe not so safe. But anyways, the idea is that we use our best reference. And again, the best reference is a life reference, or a live reference. So again, I draw a very soft circle. I'm pretty sure you guys can barely see it. But anyways, I use my pencil and I look for angles. When I get the angle from here and the angle from there, it angles downward. So again, I'm going to do the same thing. So if I say this is the center, well, this is going to go slightly down. So again, it has a little bit of an angle moving downwards. As far as what is the next part? Well, the next part is to attempt to draw the eyelids. Now, as far as the eyelids, they come in all different kinds of shapes. There's probably a good 10 to 15. And again, they make your upper eyelid may go up higher and then a little bit lower. They maybe go a little bit more rounded towards the back. They could go a little bit more rounded and then kind of fall around. It could be very, very straight-ish with a little bit of an incline moving upwards. Maybe, I don't know. All the other ones are very, very light variants of this one here. So again, it's just a lot of varieties. As far as the bottom eyelid, again, it can kind of go downwards, go back upwards. It can kind of be a little bit more flatter. It can be a little bit more rounded. It could be almost kind of like straight-ish. You know, there's just so many different varieties. So again, as far as the upper eyelid, the lower eyelid, you have to decide what am I looking at, and then of course make that decision. So as far as this drawing, is it going to look exactly like this? Maybe it might look kind of, but you know, I'm not putting all my money it's going to come out perfect. But again, I want it to be human-like. So again, as far as how good, how will I be able to, I guess, rubric my portrait? You know, what is the most essential? You know, what's the most thing? What's the thing I can get away with? Or what am I? What is my expectation? The first one is you like it to be very human. You know, if it looks very human, less robotic, less two-dimensional, that's great. You know, human is very, very good because again, a lot of things sometimes they look very artificial. Definitely you also want to make sure that again, it looks, of course, you know, like the person, you know, fairly believable. Definitely if a person can recognize it, all, you know, that's all great too. So again, there are a lot of levels of success. So again, we want to make sure that we do follow. So from here, of course, it goes upwards and somewhere around here, it starts to turn around. So about right here, I'm gonna go upwards. And again, I'm gonna go kind of rigid at first. And then from there, I'll kind of just taper the lines a little bit. So from here to here, I go very, very light, very, very soft. So I have that idea of that angle, but I know I don't want to make it so so such a hard line. So again, just like in my shape of my finger, when you drew that finger, we knew that that line was not completely straight. It goes in, it goes out, it goes inwards and outwards. So there's a lot of little tiny little nuances that they're there, but it's just a matter of can you find them and are you actually going to draw them. So you definitely want to draw them. So I put a little wiggle to this line. And to me, it seemed a little bit more fatty right here. And so that's where it seemed a little bit thicker. So I kind of wobbled it out just a tiny bit, and then I just kind of turned it around. Do I know this is too high? Do I know it's too low? No, I really don't. I just know that it does have a good angle. And again, I can compare one to the other, and that matched up really well. So this little angle here, I compared that, and I moved it to here. So that looks pretty spot on. As far as here within the tear duct, a lot of people say, was it just kind of like a triangle shape? Yeah, but then it kind of opens up a little bit. So again, as far as technology wise, the cameras are great, because again, you're able to open up. But again, if I had another picture, like say like this one, says, how about that? All right, that looks really nice, but I can't open it up anymore, and I'm very confused as to what's going on here. So again, this would not be a good reference. So again, if you are taking a picture of someone to draw, you want to make sure that you move the camera as close as you can before it gets blurry. That way, if you're able to open it up, it opens up really well. From here, it kind of opens up a little bit, tiny bit like this. It goes slightly upwards, just a hair. And then from here, it seems to just kind of go around in a really nice, beautiful curve. So I'm going to do the same thing too. But again, just very, very light. So again, if I don't approve, I say, well, let me move this over this way a little bit. Again, as far as erasing, you really try not to erase because even Prismacolor has this little stickiness, I don't know, a little tackiness to it that it doesn't like to be erased, but you can erase it, especially if you went, you know, fairly soft. You didn't go too aggressive. But again, I want to make sure that the lines are very clean. Again, I can always come back. And again, just kind of just pull the line around just by using my wrist really nice. So again, I'm hoping, I have students that I have in my other classes. And when I see them sketching, it's like, oh my God, why are you holding a pencil like that? So much time and effort that I spent with you to try to hold the pencil with your fingertips. You can have better movement. And then I see them semesters later holding in the thumb on the top. I feel like getting a little saw and just like, okay, let me help you out here. Let me take that nub off. But anyways, habits are kind of hard to break. But again, the best thing to do is again, you really want to, feel the pencil with the tips of your fingers. But again, I hold it all differently. I really never hold it like this because there really is no reason for me to hold it like this. Just because it's so awkward to move and I can't get any circular motion. And again, I can't get a really good feel because again, my thumb has a really nice sense of feel to the edge. So again, I can feel the pencil much, much better. If I was holding a brush, same thing with a brush. Sometimes I hold the brush like this, and sometimes I hold it like that. All different kinds of ways. But again, you want to be able to be very, very flexible the way you hold the pencil. As far as drawing the circleness of the eye, I know that the iris is slightly tucked over here, but there's a lot underneath the upper eyelid. So if I had to say, well, let's go two little marks here. Again, it's just a little bit underneath and I'm going to turn around. So just very, very lightly. So did I give my enough space? Yeah, it looks kind of there. Maybe just a hair less. Again, just very, very softly. And again, I just turn into it. I said, is that enough? I said, well, maybe it's too much. Maybe the first line was the best line. So I went around this side and then I go around this side. Does that look good? Does that look circular? The last thing I want to do is draw an oval. I want to make sure it's nice and round like a marble. Because again, the perspective is you're looking directly at a person. If you're looking a little bit more at a three-quarter angle, of course, the shape of the eye is going to be a little bit skewed. It's going to look a little bit more like an oval. But this looks pretty good as far as the shape of it. It has a nice roundness to it. And as far as the amount that I have left, it feels right. So again, we're not tracing it, and I wouldn't want to ask anyone to trace anything. Why would we want to use a projector? Why would we want to use a piece of tracing paper? Why would we want to graph it? So again, there are a lot of course, applications for those things. But again, you're always going to feel like you need a safety net. After you use a tracing machine once, so like, I feel dependent on the machine. I need the machine. So again, just kind of just, it doesn't have to be perfect. You know, it does not have to be perfect whatsoever. As far as proportions, you'll always get better. Definitely spend more time looking. And again, you can always use your fingers. You can always use, say, well, is this like in the middle or is this to the right? You can always use your thumb. Using your thumb, the edge of my thumb to that line and then the tip of the pencil, and I move it over. That is spot on. So at first I had doubt, but just by doing that, it looks much better. So again, I'm not going to shade anything dark. I'm just trying to draw a few little contours. And again, the contours is basically it's just the whole foundation to the drawing. It gives me a sense as to where is everything going. So here it seems very, very narrow. So again, I'm going to keep that very, very narrow. Here it seems much wider. So here at the corner of the eye, this is where it seems to kind of just change directions. I could put a little bit of a dot to get an idea that it's going to get a little bit wider to here. And then from here, it kind of goes down and it goes a little bit beyond the eye. So I'm somewhere over here. But that's about it as far as the drawing part. As far as the brow itself, I'm not going to attempt to really draw the brow. I might just kind of just do a little la la la, you know, to it. You know, just kind of get an idea that this goes a little bit beyond. So again, this is the corner, a little bit beyond, about right there. It's very, very close here. Of course, you start turning away. And as far as the brow, way up here, right here at the end of the eye, this is where it kind of reaches its highest point. So about somewhere around there. And from here, it goes back downwards. As to how far, well, it looks like from here, quite a bit, you know, maybe to all the way over there. So again, just kind of get an idea. So from here on out, I'm just going to start hitting it with the same color. Again, a lot like the paper bag. So here, again, this is a very, very safe neutral to use. It's very, very soft. And I'm going to start killing the white. I'm going to start getting rid of the white. And again, as far as like, are you sure you should be using brown? Maybe shouldn't you be using like silver? Because this looks kind of silver. So no, I'm not going to use silver yet. Again, I'm just going to, again, it's very, very easy for me to transform this light sienna, this light brown. And again, I'm gobbling up information. I'm looking for areas that says stay away from your highlights, move this way, move that way, move back upwards. Right here, there's a little dark spot there, there's a little bit of a dark spot here, and then there it goes. So again, every 2 seconds, I'm looking back, I'm looking back. And again, I've already captured all these little details here. So again, that was very, very quick. From here, again, I would love to be able to get rid of the try to develop the people itself. You're going to start to develop that. A lot of people say, why aren't you using black? Well, the thing is, once you go black, you're never going to get back out of it. You know, it's just way too heavy. It's way too powerful. And it's just going to destroy the potential to use something else. So again, I'm just going to, again, like the paper bag, I'm just doing my layers. And again, as far as here, I'm going to do my transition. I'm going to work my way downward, so a little bit darker. And I'm going to transition down, transition down, transition down, transition down. The color pencils are a lot easier to transition because they have that nice little bit of wax. They have that nice little bit of oil. So they slide really, really nice through the paper. And again, you're using the paper that has a little bit of tooth to it. So it's holding on to it just a little bit better. So again, as far as what I would like you guys to do, maybe we can do, I can grade you guys on the eye itself, and also can give you another grade for the mouth and the nose, and then we'll kind of gradually put things together as far as to attempt to try to draw a face. The face itself is going to take a little bit of time, but again, if you've never worked with the Prismacolors, we have to kind of course, you know, baby step our way towards it. But again, as far as what I do see here, that's very, very light. Here, there's more shading along the edges. So again, I darkened up a little bit here, and I kind of faded in. There's a lot of shadow up here, so I kind of faded that down. But I'm starting to get some really nice form. As far as here for the white of the eye, I want to get rid of that too. And I fade this downwards, push this way in. I have a little highlight there, so stay away from the light, stay away from the light. So I kind of work my way back this way. So normally in a portrait, we never do this. We never do this mono detail because within a portrait, it's very, very fast. Because again, this would never be to this scale. It would never be to this proportion. It would always be, of course, much smaller. So again, you would not be able to see this much. So again, by drawing it with this and with a good reference, definitely it's a much greater challenge because again, you're forced to draw a lot more than of course you normally would. Again, you can see everything so clearly. So as far as again, the eye has a little bit of this greenishness. Could I use a little bit of that greenishness? Sure. So right now I'm going to go with put my colors up here. Oh, here's fine. So I'm going to go with something that already looks kind of greenish. So there's a little bit of the yellow green, and I'm going to push a little of this yellow green on top. And it also has a little sense of blueness to it too. So I said, can you do some blueness to it? Sure. So all these are very, very safe colors because they do have a lot of white. So these are tints of greens. This is a tint of yellow green. So tint is any color that has white in it. And definitely this is very, very safe to use. I do have only one blue here, which is this one here. This is I think it's a true blue. And again, it's also a tint. And again, you can definitely tell that it has white. So again, as far as what would you put that? Well, where you feel like you're going to do a good job. So again, I can't really tell you exactly where, but again, you have to keep looking. So again, this drawing here, or this picture, I'm just going to put a little bit more blue here and kind of work my way downwards, way downwards. But again, I'm still waiting to use my white color pencil. And again, I'm just starting to do a little bit of layering first. Once I start putting the white, it's going to start to come together because the white's going to do all the blending. So here I'm looking at all these little textures. They seem like they want to move towards the center. So I'm kind of pushing them a little bit towards the center. I'm pushing them towards the center. I'm going along the outer edges a little bit. So again, as far as when you do work with colored pencils, it's like doing a drawing, a graphite drawing like 4 or 5 times, just because you have to keep going over an area. And of course, you have to keep looking at an area. It never really ends. It's just kind of moving back and forth. Okay. So it's in the movie. Yeah. So again, I'm transitioning, I'm layering. And again, I'm working with the lighter colors first, and then I'll go with the darker colors second. So again, you have to be a little bit patient so you can kind of start developing the colors. Some people want to go to the very, very beginning, very, very dark, very, very bold. I know this has a little bit of sense of it being hazel as well, because again, I do see some of that brown. And I do have the brown in my hand already, so I'll put a little bit of that brown as well. But again, the contrast is coming. You have to wait a little bit. So here I'm going to put a little bit more of that brown to start to neutralize some of that green that I put down. And also along the edges, you can definitely see that the contour of the iris is also very, very soft. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to soften everything together, and I'm going to use some white. So the white, again, I'm going to use a little bit more of a circular motion. I'm going to blend in, I'm going to blend in. And it's going to get rid of all of that texture of the paper, and it's going to start to look more like a painted surface. So much, much smoother. I don't know why I can smell it. I can smell the Prismacolor. So after this, I'm going to go ahead and use a little bit of the indigo blue to start getting some layers for the idea of using the black. Again, I may not use the black. If I can get away with just doing the indigo. As far as the indigo, it's this one here. And again, it does look like black. So when I do use it for the iris, it definitely feels like black. But again, it has an essence of blue, which is much greater. I want to keep that essence of blue if I can. So as soon as I did that, I said, oh, there's that contrast. So this is just like doing the ribbon. At first, it had very, very low contrast. You can see the grain of the paper. So that does not look aesthetically pleasing. It doesn't look very, very good. So again, the nice dark color is starting to show through. I'm going to go ahead and use some more of that indigo blue since I have it in my hand. And I'm going to start to trickle it up to the top. And I'm going to push it in, push it in, push it in, as if there are little textures, little lines that move towards the center. Again, I'm more likely going to have to use black because it's only going to get so dark up here. And I do want it to get a little bit bolder. I can neutralize the blue by adding the orange to it, but at the same time, it's just going to look kind of brownish. I really would like it to be a little bit darker, more lifelike, and with a little bit more of that contrast. But this has come a long way so far, so it's looking pretty good. And again, normally, we would not put this much effort just to doing one eye. But again, for us to know a little bit more, as far as using the colors, we're trying to push ourselves. So I'm not sure if this is the best way of learning, but definitely you will see a good result, from the very, very beginning towards the very, very end. But again, my eyes are constantly moving back towards the photograph. I try not to get too fixated with the actual drawing, because then I'll start to kind of get a little bit lost. And again, I really don't want to get too lost. And again, I'm okay if it doesn't look exactly like the photograph. I'm okay with that. But again, I don't want it to look deformed. I don't want it to look sloppy. I don't want it to look, like again, there's no sense as it looks very amateurish. So again, I want to see the transitions. I want to see some of that layering. I want to see that nice blending. Those are things that are already given that you should be doing already. I do have a little tiny black pencil. Let's see. Is this the one? No, it's a pencil. Okay. So as far as the black, I am going to use a little bit of black. Oh, it broke. Try to blow off the shavings once in a while. That way you don't start to pick them up underneath your drawing hand. So just like the graphite, you don't want to do any smudging, because eventually you start building up a lot of little flakes of Prismacolors around the place. So again, I broke the point here. So we're going to try and transition this down a little bit, transition this down a little bit, but it's looking pretty good. I could definitely move away from this and start working on the whites of the eye. So I'm not done with the middle, but I'm just going to move away from it just for a little while. I'm usually going to clean my tip, of my white, because sometimes I may have a color on it. So again, just with my thumb, kind of clean it off, because I'm going to start to work in here. Now, as far as in here, it's not done yet. There is a little bit, I can use a little bit more of this brownish color. I said, why are you using brown? Isn't it better to use something else? Well, there is. I mean, I just need something that's a little bit more neutral if I want to create some grayness. Let me see. Now, normally I would just use a little bit of pencil. As far as pencil, so why are you going to use pencil with a color pencil? Well, the graphite will blend in with a Prismacolor, and it will look like a really, really nice gray. Or I say, how about can you use silver? Definitely can use silver too. But again, right now I'm just working with the whites of the paper. The white of the paper is showing through. But now I'm going to use the white. So again, I kind of worked all my way. And again, there's a little bit of white left over, and it's right here. So my point right now is clean. And so as I go over this area, it's not going to have anything to kind of like blend into it. But as I work towards the right, you can see that it's picking up both the graphite, the silver, and the brown, and it's blending it together. So the brown gives it that nice warmthness. It gives it a nice sense of it being kind of warm, like it's kind of a nice little fleshy color. And as far as the graphite, it made it look a little bit more grayish. As far as the silver, kind of a little bit of the same. As far as this part here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to work inside the iris again, and I'm going to push around. And I'm going to try to bring in some of that sienna into the actual iris. So again, as far as the outer contour, it's going to be a little bit washed out. And that's what I like to see here. But again, it is darker. So I'm going to go back and darken it up a little bit more. But again, I got a really nice fade, and it looks very, very natural. As far as this, I really like that grayness. Because again, you could leave it sharp like that, but I don't know if that looks, like the real deal. So again, that looks pretty good to me. As far as underneath the eye, definitely I could try to incorporate a little bit of blue, but I go, well, I don't know. The blue it is blue. I don't know if I wanted to give it a sense of blue. So again, a sense meaning that there's like a little taste. It's like when you're tasting food, you say, I can tell there's comino in it. So what do you mean comino? Yeah, I just taste a little comino there. There's a little something in there. Again, that's within your taste. As far as visually, definitely you can always sense that there is a little bit of color of red in it or something in there. But again, you don't want to go too heavy. Again, this is a very, very light area. So could you take this off? Well, you can try to beat it out with an eraser, but That'd be kind of tough. You know, again, it's very, very difficult to bring the white back. So again, as far as the white is very, very good. I like to use it a lot as a blender. And again, as far as using the blue, I kind of take it back. I shouldn't have used it. But again, I'm all right with it. I can always try to put a little silver in it. And again, the silver is a neutral or metallic, but it always looks kind of grayish. You know, silver doesn't look like silver, even if you have white paper. They do with gold, it doesn't look like gold. You have to actually try to make your own gold by using yellows, browns, and oranges. And that's the only way you can actually make gold. So as far as here within the eye, I'm going to use a little bit of blue indigo. I could use a dark green, but I think there's already green underneath it. So I'm just going to try to bring back the outer edge of the eye, the iris. Again, that works pretty good. So again, I can go back and soften it up again. But again, as far as this area here, I'm okay with it. Now, what I would actually use as a color is this color here, this nice little lavender. This is one of my favorite colors to use. And sometimes I use it too much, but I really like it. I really like it the way it looks against this color of skin anywhere, whether it be in the lips, the cheeks, or in the eyes. It just looks so natural for me. And again, I'm already built up that really nice layering, that nice layer that looks a lot like paint. So again, as far as here, again, I'm going to say this is okay, and I'm going to start working on this. I still haven't finished here, but again, if you're a perfectionist, of course, you could spend, almost half a day, nitpicking, working and working. And a lot of people say, well, why are you wasting so much time? I'm not wasting time as long as I'm learning. And of course, I want evidence that I am capable. And that is something that a lot of us do not have, is any evidence that we are capable of doing things. So again, as far as here, this would be, again, equivalent to this. I want to keep this area very, very light. Here, I'm just going to feather it, just give it just a little bit of that brown. I'm going to come back and I'm going to use a little bit of the, again, this is my black here. I'm going to use a little bit of the pencil first. I'm put a little bit of pencil on the upper half. And this is going to make it more grayish. Again, I put a little bit more and just kind of roll it my way down, a little bit of light transition. Then I'm going to come back and I'm not going to use any black yet. So I'm just going to go do that. I did use a little bit of silver in the other one. Might as well use it here too. Roll it down. And then I'll use a white color pencil. Make sure the point is clean. No dirt on it, no nothing. Then when I go approach my white, it'll stay white. And then I'll roll upwards. Circular motion, circular motion. A good amount of force. That way everything gets picked up and gets pushed together and mixed together very well. Again, this looks pretty good as far as the quality, but again, I don't want this to be so sharp. So again, I'm gonna try to roll inwards. And the other one, what did I do? Well, I worked in the inside and I rolled outwards. There you go. So again, that's just to kind of soften up that contour. But here I haven't really worked in here, I haven't really worked in there. I do have some areas started, but again, there's still a lot more to go. As far as using the black, now we'll use a little bit of black, especially in here, but again, just a little bit, not too much. And go back with the white, plug it back in. So again, as far as this texture of the paper, it will give you a good amount of layers. It won't give you a lot of layers, but a good amount of layers. Depending on how aggressive you are. Again, here comes my favorite color, a little bit of the lavender, but I see a lot of brightness of color in there. So I'm going to use this color here. It looks like a bright pink. I don't try to memorize any of the names of the colors. I usually say it's reddish or bluish or greenish or a tint or a shade. And I'll use a little bit of lavender. Yeah, lavender is going to make it look good. And just try to fade it towards the light. That looks pretty good. So again, as far as within the camera is pretty decent. But again, I need more better lighting from the sides, you know, so you're not really picking up the good colors. Well, they're all right, I guess. So again, I did pick up some debris here. So I'm gonna kind of clean that off. So as far as this, again, I'm gonna call it that for now. I should have left that white there. I forgot that there was a highlight there. I might try to erase it out. I'll do that later, I guess. Cut the eraser and see if I can get it in there. But that's okay for now. As far as doing the highlight, I guess I can do some of that right now. As far as the highlight here, it has differentness. It has some weirdness going on in there. Definitely I could try some color, or a little, maybe a little metallic. It's not bright in color. I'm just gonna put a little tiny bit. Use a little white. I'm gonna soften the edge by pushing the white into the outer edges of the contour. So that looks okay. So now we actually start doing the skin. As far as the skin, I'm going to start off here and work my way out. And again, I'm just going to do just simple transitioning. But again, at the same time, I have to record something. This is your highlight. This is your highlight. Stay away from those areas. Go a little bit more so here and work your way around this area. Work your way around this area and all the way to the top. Here on the inside, it looks darker. So I'd like to come back and do that too. But here, I'm going to start off here a little bit darker. A little bit bolder, and I'm going to transition this out. I'm going to transition this out, and I'm going to push out. A little bit deeper. And you're like, where is it darker? Well, it's somewhere maybe a little bit here, or maybe a little bit there. Again, you'd be safe just to kind of just transition it all out. Here it's going to definitely get a little bit lighter. So again, I'm going to do a light fade, a lighter hand. So again, hold the pencil as you would a graphite pencil. Again, a little bit more angle. You can see my fingers are on the sides, not like this. So again, try not to hold it like a fist. So again, remember this is a tool and not a tool for writing your name. So again, I did see that again, the light kind of travels inwards. And again, there's a little bit more of the brown and a lot less brown over here. So that's looking so much better. And again, I'm gonna do the same thing here. So if that looks good, I wanna do that also here. So even though it's more of a fleshy color, I'm just gonna get rid of some of that white. And I try to keep that little tiny bit of light, a little highlight right here. So again, that kind of reminds me again when I was working on the tones, where you ask me to do a little light in between each tone. It kind of reminds me of that too. So again, I'm going to try to push this way. Again, there's shading in here. I would not imagine there would be shading in there, but there is. As far as the highlights right there, so I want to make sure that this part here stays lighter. So I'm a little bit darker here. Again, always looking left and right, left and right. You know, and that's why this is a good reference because I can zoom into it. And that's as big as it gets, but that's big enough for me. So again, I try to keep that light there. So again, that looks good. So can I continue? So I'm gonna go ahead and just continue with this and knock all this out. And then I can come back and do some blending after that. So again, I'm starting to get excited. You know, the idea is to get some excitement somewhere. But some people are very, very patient and they can work here, they can work there, they can go back this way and that way. I need to find a place where there's a good sense of good growth. So I'm really happy that I was able to get this. It has a nice sense of roundness. I was able to use colors like blues and greens. But again, I toned them down by having layers of neutrals underneath. So most people would not have imagined that everything was at one time, you know, this little sienna. So again, as far as here, it's a little bit darker right inside of the contour. So again, I'm gonna go a little bit bolder, refine it just a little bit. And from here, I'm gonna transition this down just a little bit. Work my way down. So again, as far as technically, you know, this is the most technical of all parts of your face, is because there are so many little nuances. Again, we can still do the mouth, we still have to, of course, do the ear. But again, the eye is probably the most fascinating. Imagine if it was like crying. Imagine if it was frightened. You know, again, it changed. The shape of it would change. The angle, you know, the colors, I guess, would be kind of the same, but it depends on the angle of the face, towards the angle of the light. The more light, of course, would reveal a lot more color. So definitely this is darker of a shade. So I kind of say maybe it's lighter, it's a little bit darker. And here he just kind of rolled it down, just made it a little bit softer. And here he just kind of just trickles outward. So I'm just kind of leave it like that. From here, I'm going to blend this upward. So here's going to be darker. And as I work my way upward, it's going to get a little bit lighter. And here I'm going to transition this up. So again, as far as here, this is the only where you see the light. So I'm going to go ahead and trickle this upwards a little bit underneath the brow. It's a little piece of something there. Again, you always have to be careful of little tiny flakes of color. So, because if you pick it up, it's going to reveal itself with a white pencil. So again, now I'm holding the pencil on the bottom. As far as here, this part here wants to trickle upwards. As far as here, this part goes down. So looking pretty nice. You got some really nice movement, lighter, a little bit darker, a little darker, a little bit lighter, a little darker, a little bit lighter. So definitely I can come back with a white pencil, or do I want to sneak in a little color? So I'm going to go ahead and sneak in a little color. Is there any color that I have here that I would use? Well, I do have this cream here, and most people say, why weren't you using this one from the very beginning? But I mean, it's don't need it, don't really need it. But I can use this also as a blender. It does look a lot like skin. Like you put it next to your color your skin and say, wow, it looks like it should have been your go-to color. But again, I'm going to, of course, do a lot of layering. So a lot of these colors are kind of eventually look something like that. But I like to use my own little bit of red. I like to use my lavender. It has a little bit of red. It has some white. It has a hint of blue to it as well. But again, this is a pretty good blender as well. So right now, just kind of giving this a little bit more. And this has a little bit more of that nice tint, a lot of white in it. Again, the color that I'm really missing is something, again, a little bit more like this pink. So I'm going to use a little bit of this, here, especially where I see it, a little bit more purplish. So purplish, I want to use purple, but I'll wait for that. So again, as far as the paper bag, it's very, very similar to the color of skin. So again, really wanted you guys to kind of play with it. Of course, with the neutrals, but again, challenge yourself to use a little bit of color too, to see if you can actually be able to tame it and not let it, get away from you. Because again, a lot of people want to do very, very brightly colored things, but at the same time, you're going to end up just coloring. You're not going to end up actually manipulating color, neutralizing color. So it wouldn't be too much of a benefit. Of course, you get to be able to play, but at the same time, you wouldn't be able to refine yourself or be able to understand the color on another level by being able to utilize it a little bit more. So definitely it's feeling very, very peachy, but again, I have a lot of the texture of the paper showing through. So at this point, I said, well, let's go ahead and just start using the white. Again, I kind of cleaned the white a little bit, and I'm going to start off on this side here. And I'm going to push with bigger circular motion bringing the transitions together. So definitely you want to do very, very good transitions. That way when you come back with a white as a blender, it just looks very, very flawless as far as the transition. It looks very, very smooth. It looks very, very clean. And I can definitely see the nice fade as it works away this way. As far as up here, so well, you know, you have light here. Should we start there? Yeah, it's a perfect spot. Again, here I use circular motion and kind of start pulling this nice color together from the top to the bottom and kind of ride the highlight, ride the highlight all the way across. And again, just kind of just pull the colors together. Here, I'm gonna kind of ride the inside, go left and right, left and right. And I'm gonna try to just kind of just do a few little strokes because again, I want to keep it a little bit darker there. But again, it looks so much more cleaner. It looks a lot more creamy. I would kind of question this here a little bit, but now that I look at the pictures, yeah, it looks pretty right. You know, this is the light here. And of course, it goes back around. Again, I'm going to add color here. As far as up here in the top, you know, wow, it's a big space. But again, you know, you use bigger strokes. So again, I'm going to turn the page this way a little bit. Knocking some of my colors over. So I'm going to start off here. Big circular motion, big circular motion, big circular motion. Continue to blend, continue to pull it all together. And that really, really made it come together right there. Now I did have a little particle of blue there. You can see a little particle of blue and it got caught by the color. It's probably some of the indigo blue from when it broke. But usually if I do buy spares, I always buy like an extra 2 white color pencils. Just because you use it a lot for softening of the color. So right now, this is very, very mannequin-ish, just because there's a lack of variety. It's just too much cream. It's just too much of, you know, just very, very simple color. You know, there's not really, you know, splashes of color. So I really, really looking forward to using the lavenders, a little bit of the greens, a little bit of the reds. You know, that's what's coming up. So right now, I'm just, of course, finishing up these layers a little bit, you know, trying to get that nice, you know, foundation. And then from here, I'll start adding a little bit more color. I'm just gonna finish this part here. So again, I went all the way around it. It's cleaning up a bit, but again, I have my transitions. It fades this way, it fades this way. I have my highlight here, highlight here. You know, it's starting to come around. So I'm starting to feel pretty good about it. Now from here, I can start working with some color. So what color would be best? Well, you got your little peach color. You have your nice little hot pink. You know, can you get some of that in there? Yes. But the one that I've been really wanting to is more like a little bit of a rouge or even a little bit of violet. I've been really wanting to use some of this. But again, you know, this is like dynamite, you know, as far as this color here. It is so rich. But again, I'm just going to approach it, you know, the side of the pencil, just a hair. I also see an essence of blue. So again, this is when it gets exciting. This is when it gets very exciting. And he's like, why do you say blue? So I see bluish, something bluish here. So again, I'm letting my instincts go. And again, I know that color is really going to make it really, really come out a lot more. So again, right now I'm adding the color, but again, the color is just sitting on the surface. It's not blended into the bottom layer. So you really can't see it. Right now it just looks like a roughness to it. So eventually when I do come back with a white, or so how about a light cream? I do have a light cream here. So I do have this light cream. So I can use a little bit of this. And again, now you can see that nice little soft violet. And I go over this, you can see, oh, there's that little bit of blue. So is that blue too powerful? So, well, maybe. So let's go ahead and kill it. So I have an orange here. So, so I have a little bit of orange here. This is kind of like a yellow orange. But it might turn to green. I'm okay with green. So I'll put a little bit over that. Again, the problem here is that the blue is just kind of like ends there. I have to kind of pull it outwards a little bit, and that'll be fine. Now we do it white. So again, if the color gets away from it, you can always, of course, neutralize it with something else. But I'm okay with it looking a little bit blue for right now. The blue is very, very powerful. So again, the same thing with the violet, it's very, very powerful. But again, I'm going to put color everywhere. So again, don't get like, you messed it up. Again, the lavender is one I really, really like to use it a lot. But always looking back at the picture, always looking for more, always looking for more. So here, definitely I said this is just way too white. What can you possibly add? Well, I kind of like, it does look very neutral. So maybe I'll just continue with a neutral. And I add a little bit of this cream color. We get away with that, kind of. Now, one of the things that this eye has is a very, very fine detail. And I guess I'll do that at the very, very end. And that's still like clean separation of the eye. But as far as all these little details, like all these little lines and stuff, like you have all these little tiny little lines, you can always do them, and it's like, how can you bring those out? Some people that again that like to draw again these details, like you can look up irises with HD, and they bring out this ridiculous texture. I don't know, I'm pretty sure you guys have seen those before. Again, ridiculous amounts of texture within the iris. It looks ridiculous. It looks very, very sculptural. But again, you can look for pictures like that, and then you can use that as your reference. But that would look pretty cool too. But again, you can find those. As far as red, would I ever use a little bit of red? So maybe, but not very much. Because again, this is a lot like the violet that's just very, very strong. And it's just gonna, wherever you use it, you're gonna see it. But I'm thinking that I can use a little bit more of these violets. So this is where it becomes kind of like tricky as to what kind of colors to choose and bounce from one to the other. So I'm gonna use a little more of this violet here. There's a rouge, but it is like a deep wine. It's very, very very intense. I think I'm gonna use the rouge down here, and I'm gonna use the red up on top. I think I can get away with that. It's more like a red orange, like a poppy red. Then I'm going to transition this out. Once I do that, I can come back with a white and push back in. And again, if you want to be a little bit more expressive with the colors, you can definitely be more expressive. But again, if it gets out of hand, you should try to neutralize them because again, it gets a little bit too loud. And the color starts to dominate the drawing. For the dark brown, I do have a dark brown. I could try using a little dark brown as well to go back to the neutral. But again, when you see the neutrals, it looks boring. It looked better when they had a little bit of color. Again, the nice thing about the layering, you can go back and layer it again. So definitely it looked okay. You know, it looks, you know, the way it should. But definitely when I got rid of that color, it's like it seemed to lose a lot of its life. That's what happens when you use black or too much browns. So eventually your paper will just had enough and it doesn't want to take any more punishment. So, you know, you just have to kind of just, well, you know, as far as that went. As far as a better paper to use is a bristle board or anything that has a vellum finish. A vellum finish has a very, very light tooth, a little bit more exaggerated than the drawing paper that I have here, but it's able to take a lot more beating. And sometimes, again, it can be too toothy, where it's like, man, it takes a lot of work to actually work it into the actual paper, you know, and you might not like it, but at least it gives you a little more possibility. A little bit of color helped a little bit too. So again, the color is really trying to make it look a lot better. So again, it was very, very neutral. And again, any colors would help, but again, you really don't want to use too much of one color. You want to kind of use as many, well, quite a few, not as many, but again, it'd be kind of challenging to use a little bit more. As far as the green, I like the green. Again, this is very, very little. So again, this is a very, very light yellow green. I put a little yellow green here. Again, you can always try and neutralize it a little bit with a little bit of pink. Go back over with a little bit of lavender. Always circular motion. That's a little bit more light. Really got to push on it really hard to get that little pop of light on it. far as other light, I can try to sneak in. Again, I haven't really gone back to work on this area here. Again, I probably would like to soften up the contour of the eyelids too. And go back with the black. As far as the eyelashes, you don't really want to touch them until you're really ready for them because you cannot draw in between the eyelashes anymore. So we're going to work on a little bit more fade in here. And I'll try to get the eyelashes in there. I'll go ahead and throw some of the eyelashes in there. As far as the eyelashes, you want to make sure they just have a really nice sense of curve to them. So a lot of people say like they would like to do them, of course, in black. I would definitely say do it first in the dark brown, and then from there add a little bit more to it. As far as the eyelashes, you have to make it look like they're coming towards you and then moving upwards. So if you say, well, let me just do the ones that are a little bit easier, and that's the ones to the right. So if you're like right-handed like I am, normally you're going to want, of course, maybe start about right here and kind of work your way up with a nice little flare. Now, as far as a colored pencil, you see that it doesn't really want to go over it completely, especially like over here. But again, I still want to go with a little bit of a lighter color first, and then I'll go a little bit heavier after. Again, I need to turn it upwards. And as I turn it upwards, I try to lighten it up. I try to soften it. And I try to go down into the eye and go back upwards a little bit. So here towards the end on this side, they're a lot longer. But again, you want to have a sense of randomness too. You don't want them to look like, again, they're all like perfectly drawn, perfectly separated, because then it looks kind of artificial too. Again, that's with the dark brown. Again, they look nice and soft. They look fairly natural. But again, it doesn't, I could use a little bit more contrast. So I'm going to pull them down. The black will go over it like nothing. And again, I'm going to use a little bit of black and kind of work right into some of that lighter brown. So I'll have a little bit, at least two tones for the eyelashes instead of them just being black, which may be just kind of like too fake, too artificial. You know, I'll use a little bit of the dark brown, and then of course I use a little bit of a little bit of black. So here on the reflection, you can see a little reflection of also the eyelashes on top of the highlight. So I'm just going to put those in there as well. Now, some people would actually use black and put it in there, but it's just way too bold. It's way too strong. So again, I'm just trying to limit the amount. And again, like I said, I really don't need it to be perfect. I really don't. I'm playing with color, and I'm okay with the colors being a little bit different. I'm okay with them being a little bit more unique. I'm okay with that. As far as the ones on the bottom, definitely they're a little bit more browner than blacker. So over here, again, where would they start? They start on the outer edge. And again, sometimes they definitely seem like they go in clusters. Sometimes I'll go inwards and inwards and then outward, inwards and inwards and outwards, because they seem much heavier at the base when they start, and of course, very, very thin. I might not even use the black, you know, for the bottom ones. I want to keep them a little bit softer, a little bit lighter. Now, if I feel like, maybe a little bit, then I could go a little bit black. Maybe at the very, very beginning. So the eyelashes definitely made a big difference. You know, it kind of helps to bring it together. You know, kind of what you kind of expect to see. You know, as far as getting closer to the end. As far as what is still next, well, you know, I'm kind of happy with this. I like a little bit of yellow green. I like a little bit of blue. I like that a little bit of that poppy red. I like a little bit of that pink. You know, as far as the my favorite again this the very, very soft violet, you know. Again, it's everywhere. So again, I can use it definitely a little bit, but again, this is my favorite color to use. I really wouldn't know, you know, if people would like it or not, but as a finishing layer, definitely kind of course gives it a really, really nice, you know, lavender soft feel. And again, some of these areas, again, they have too much white, so I need to get rid of some of that white. It shouldn't be white. So again, I can get rid of it with a little bit of lavender as well. And that's where the lavender would probably show a little bit more so, right against the white. Come back with a white Prismacolor, you know, make sure it's clean, and come back and rework it again. So some of these areas here, so that contour is still darker. Can you make it darker? So yeah, I can make it darker. So I'll try first with the rouge. I'd rather have it a color than black or brown. But I saw what brown did over here, so I didn't like that. So again, it's going to put a little bit more of that nice rouge. And it has a nice little transition to both sides, but it's a little bit more so to the inside. So I'm just going to trickle it out just a little bit. And that looks pretty cool. That looks pretty good. Again, as far as your instincts, you know, your instincts are going to take over. As to where would you be more critical would be, of course, when you get into trouble. When you get into trouble because, you know, maybe bad blending, maybe the colors get too crazy on you when you still, or maybe you haven't used any color, so it looks really basic. So again, the colors really bring it to life. And again, that's why I wanted you guys to work with a plastic bag. Again, this started off with just this, you know, just start off with this, but again, I'm layering, and I understand this is a lot like a painting. So again, I want to get to that painted finished look to it. So again, I'm still working on it. I'm pretty sure, I don't know if you guys are still there, if you drifted away, but I'm almost there. But again, I'm not really splurging on the color. Should I? Why not? You know, as long as it's tamed, as long as you tone it down. And in this case here, I'm going to tone it back with a little bit of lavender again. So I did use a very bright color, that poppy red. But again, it's on top of the sienna. It's on top of the white. You know, over here, of course, I'm approaching the white area over here. So, you know, there's no neutralization there. But very smooth transition. Going back over. I said, I'm not going to use the white no more. I'm going to use that cream color. Well, go ahead. I'm going to use the cream that has more white though. I'm holding it on the bottom, trying to use the side of it a little bit more to make better coverage. Making sure there's no little debris of colors. But definitely it seems like a lot of work. You know, it feels like I've been working on this for a good while. But I have the evidence. I have the evidence of progress, evidence of good blending, good proportions. I'm trying to be creative, at least with my color scheme a little bit. I'm not trying to get too crazy with the colors, but you know, I'm putting my effort. But always looking back at the photograph so I don't get too far lost. Coming back with a white pencil, soften up the cream a little bit more. The brow time. So I still haven't messed around with this over here. I think I might just leave that alone. I just kind of soften it up a little bit. So as far as the brow, again, just like the lashes, I'm gonna start off with maybe, hey, you know what? I'm kind of worried. So you know what? I'm gonna go with a lighter color first. So I knew I've already sketched it in. I know that it was a little bit beyond, maybe somewhere around here. So again, I'm gonna start off with very thin strokes. So again, I kind of roll the pencil a little bit till I find a nice sharper edge. And once that sharper edge gets a little bit dull, I kind of turn my pencil around and I try to look for a cleaner edge. Because again, if you just use one edge, you know, eventually it'll get dull like super quick, and that line will start to look, you know, very rounded. You know, kind of a little bit. It won't look like a line anymore. It just be a little bit soft. Again, I keep rotating it in my hand. That way, I always find a sharper edge. So as far as here, it's very, very close. So I need to pull this down just a little bit more. I don't want the brows to be too thin anyways. But as you can see here, I've already worn out a lot of my paper. It doesn't want to pick it up as much there, but I'm all right with that. I like to go darker, and I'll be fine. But again, I'm moving the hairs in this direction. So I know I've already kind of drawn an idea as to where I should go. Here, of course, it moves slightly upwards. Now here, normally I would have done the color of skin first. So I wouldn't, you know, done the brow yet. So I would have kind of done more, a little bit more skin here, then come back and do a little bit more. Very long brow. So right here, I'd go darker, use a burnt umber. I don't know if I'm sure I'm going to attempt to use a black, but not very much. If I can get away with just using the burnt umber, I'll be okay with it. But here, since I kind of already overworked the paper, it doesn't want to take to it. So here, I know I'm going to have to use a little bit of black. The black will go over it. But again, I'm not trying to fill it in. I'm letting some of the lines of the black kind of open up a little bit, and that'll make it look a little bit more brownish. But again, I can always use, of course, the brown and just kind of blend it together. So if it looks too textured, you know, just use the brown, kind of go over it one more time, and then of course kind of smooth it out, soften it up a little bit. So I'll try to do a little bit more with the brown, the dark brown. So as far as in the upper half of the brow, I'd like to leave it just a little bit lighter. So I'm not going to add so much of the dark brown on top. I'll go ahead and use a little bit more of the light brown on top. As far as the black, it'll just come back and again, just kind of shade it underneath a little bit more. I mean, you could always use a little bit of indigo blue, but I think you'll probably be able to see the blue. And I don't think the blue will probably look too good on it. You can always try to use a little bit of pencil, but the pencil will look kind of silvery. So here it's going to use a little bit more black. But the last thing I want to do is make it look like it's getting flat. So again, occasionally I'll let some of the little tiny little hairs kind of like poke out. So again, it looks a little bit more natural. I really don't want it to look, again, like it's solid. Because then it'll look like, you know, like a check mark kind of a thing. I kind of do a little spottiness, like a little bit darker here and there. Just kind of make it look a little bit thicker, a little bit thinner on the outer edges, and a little bit heavier towards the middle, making it look a little bit heavier, a little bit thicker towards the center. And again, just kind of pull a little bit more of the black on the top a little bit. It's starting to fill out pretty good. Now, one thing that does bother me, of course, is there's no color of skin there, so it kind of looks kind of weirdish, you know. But again, I should have done a little bit of color and skin on top. That way it looks a little bit better. So again, on the top, you know, just by putting a little bit of color to it, you know, it'll start to look a lot more natural. Because it doesn't look natural because again, it's the brow, it looks like a division, and then of course you have the eye, so it looks kind of weird. One thing that's also very good is to get a little brush, you know, because sometimes these little particles, you know, as you can see there, like it's smeared a little bit. And then sometimes when you use the eraser, you just make it worse. I don't have any big brushes here, but again, any kind of a brush, and you just kind of blow them off because sometimes they get stuck to the paper, like those little ones right there. And when you go over the color pencil, it just makes it worse. I'm just gonna try to erase it. But again, I didn't go over too heavy, so this should be able to lift off. So again, a brush works really, really well. But even those little marks there, they may haunt me a little bit. So I may have to come back and erase a little bit more aggressive. But again, just by pulling a little bit more of the color of the skin this way, it makes it look a little bit more natural. Now, as far as under the brow, I need to shade it. I need to shadow it a little bit. So, well, what can I use for shadowing? Well, I was getting away with this one. Could I possibly use more of the rouge? I can try. It's a little bit of a gamble. But the color is definitely probably worth the risk. Again, I'll put a little bit of the rouge in there, a little bit heavier here. And see what happens. I'm going to come back with a cream and try to work my way back in. Again, I'm trying to create a little bit of shade underneath the brow. That way the brow looks like it's on top of the skin. That's what I see here. Again, when you are working with your phone or your technology or whatever, using a pad, you want to make sure you up the brightness because some people are working with the brightness so low, you can't see anything. You can't see the colors. So again, you want to make sure that you get it, you know, a little bit less than half would be fine. And when in doubt, you know, increase the lightness, the light, you know, ability on your phone, and definitely you'll see the colors reveal themselves a lot more. Again, I really did like the rouge. Again, I just put a little tiny bit, but again, this is a very, very dark wine color. And so I'm going to use a little bit more of that over here. So again, more so here in the back, then I can put a little bit more, another little light layer. Kind of work my way back this way. Nothing better than blowing on it. Get it out of the way. As far as all these little details, like all these little lines, and you can always, of course, use like, again, a very, very fine pencil like this one here. Put a nice little point on it. If you're trying to do all these little micro details, I don't know if you can see it here, but again, I'm going to do some little tiny lines that they kind of move outwards. And again, when you look at it from, you know, it's going to look a lot better. It has like a really nice sense of smallness, little details. If you can kind of see them, so again, I kind of made them a little bit more obvious here. But again, I still need to work a lot of color. Here, there's a lot more color in here too. So this is maybe a part where I use a little bit more lavender. I can really see the lavender showing through here. Once I do that, I'm just soften it up. And I definitely going to use a white. Make sure the tip is clean. So if this was in pencil, I could have probably done 5 of them. It takes forever to do it with a colored pencil. But again, it depends on the practice. Again, I just wanted to go very, very nice and slow. So you can see, how I would approach it, So I don't think it's as difficult as you may think, but again, it's kind of hard to get confident within it because again, it moves very, very slow. Again, it's just the way it is. But again, there's a lot more to do still. But I'm pretty happy with the progress. And as far as what I change things, well, again, I'm not really searching for perfection. And sometimes when you have that idea or that intent, you can kind of be happy somewhere in between. But again, the more you work with this, and again, if it was a commission and I have to have it perfect, just because it's my reputation or it's my ego or it's just my the person's going to purchase it, they want it to look exactly like them, then of course I'd be like, oh man, I really have to put a lot. But again, the person that usually buys a portrait, they understand that it's not traced, and again, that is that's one of the things that you can just tell a person that's going to purchase a portrait is like, this is not going to be a trace drawing. So again, if it's a little off here and there, it's just the little nuances that a person would do. Again, you just don't want to make really, really big mistakes, but of course, having the eyes misaligned, or of course, drawing the teeth very, very awkward. There's a lot of sense of a person, of course, possibly looking ugly, just because there's just so much that's pretty off, as far as proportions. So within doing these portraits, we're going to do 2 versions. We're going to do a realistic one, and we're going to do a caricature. The caricature one is the one where we can definitely have a lot of fun, messing around with the proportions of the person. And it's very, very fun. It's fairly lighthearted. And again, normally, of course, we'd be drawing each other in class, so hopefully we'll be able to have that opportunity. But again, this would be like the very, very first one. And going to be a nice way of you guys, utilizing what you've learned. Of course, the idea of blending, the ideas of transitioning, all those ideas in between. And again, you can play with color. But again, it all comes down to, of course, looking at the photograph, being true to what you're seeing. And of course, always reevaluating and always, of course, putting more energy and more effort into, you know, your technique. Work on your blending a little bit. That should be your strength. So again, if blending is not your strength, that's why you'd be ruined already. Because no matter how well you were to draw it, your finishing would just be not good. And again, you would not have any kind of success, because your blending is poor, your transition is poor, your fades are poor. So again, that's why I put so much effort and use a lot of time, into this idea of just transitioning and blending. So again, that would be your strength. Again, not always, of course, do people have a really nice sense of proportions, but again, they can finish well. You can finish well, and sometimes within itself can make the drawing look aesthetically more pleasing than, than if you didn't have those skills. So this is where I'm going to leave this drawing here. I can always, of course, keep revisiting, keep adding colors, adding a little bit more green, and it's like, that's where it gets very, very exciting because again, these little nuances of color start to kind of just jump at you. So there's kind of like this yellow green here, man, it really, really makes the colors tingle, they really makes them pop. So here I'm kind of adding it and it looks more orangish. It really has a little bit more of a bounce to it. So definitely I say I like that bounce. I'm gonna put a little bit more over here, and put a little bit more over there. But again, sometimes it's just kind of floating on the surface. You might have to come back with a white, and kind of rework it in there just a little bit. But definitely the green makes it look very, very nice. The lavender looks great. The rouge looks great. The green, of course, is more of a pop. That, of course, here's a little bit more neutral. Here it looks a little bit more bluish. But again, I kind of played with it a little bit. As far as the circularness, you know, it looks pretty circular. I could probably kind of work on the shape of the iris just a little bit more. But I don't think people are going to look at that. You know, I think people are going to first going to look at the color, and they're going to get really excited about the color. Then of course they look at the proportions, they look at the glare, the highlights. So again, I'm pretty sure there'll be other things besides that.